Hi, folks. Before we get started, let me make a quick announcement. It may not look like it, but this is the continuation of understanding Trump's America First agenda. What happened, which happens often with me, is God kind of tapped on my door the other night and said, things are happening so fast. What I need you to do is I need you to come in and make a major revision on that presentation. And I need you to add a bunch of stuff because we don't have time for you to address a financial reset as one show, global issues as another show, et cetera, et cetera. We need to basically give people a very quick overview of what's coming because things are happening very fast. So this is the continuation of last week's show, but the header slide is going to look different. So let's get into this. Go to the first slide and we'll get started. The coming global crisis, facing it without fear. So we're going to have a financial crisis, the likes of which we've never seen. We're going to have probably terrorist attacks. They're trying to create World War III, but I don't think that's going to happen. We're going to have ecological crisis. We are having them right now, and I'm going to basically clarify for you what they're doing to us. And then I'm going to talk about something that you just don't hear about. They talk about the new Green Deal. I'm going to tell you why it's a sham, and I'm going to tell you why the greatest problem facing the world is, look at that picture in the middle. Look at that drop, that teardrop coming out of that eye. It's water. You can't survive without water. And so I'm going to talk about what they're doing to basically control us and cause a total global famine by allowing us to have a water crisis. Let's go to the next slide and we'll start to break this down. So this is from previous. We've already covered sovereign currency, sovereign borders, honest elections, and resource independence. So let me recap that real quick. So basically, you cannot have a nation if you don't have sovereign currency, if you don't have sovereign borders, if you don't have honest elections. And then to run your economy, you have to have resource independence. Look what happened just a few weeks ago when China tried to pull a slick one and said to the world, if you don't align behind us, then and pull away from America, we're going to cut you off from all of the rare earths. And basically that would have just completely broken the logistics exchange. So now what we're going to be doing is looking at some new material. And after we get through that, then we're going to pick this back up again with energy independence, manufacturing prowess, equitable trade agreements, global financial parity, and shared values and goals. So let's get into the next slide and let's do a deep dive. All right, so this is, like I said, new material. Basically, what we're seeing here is we have had war in the form of a Trojan horse with some 20 million illegal immigrants that will come in, and thousands of them, I think, potentially are terrorists. And I believe as we get closer and closer to the reset, to basically bringing down the financial elite financially and bringing in the new economic system that ushers in peace and prosperity, the global financial elite are getting desperate and they're going to trigger those terrorist cells. And I want to take a little bit of time to basically explain what I think is going to happen. There were tunnels that were found under the border wall, and in them were documents, were diagrams, and it looks like what they're trying to do is they're going to try to create chaos in every way they can, but they have strategic targets. They have water reservoirs, they have power stations, etc. So they basically want to bring us down. And then I believe also what they want to do is they want to attack the armories and basically create the ability for us not to be able to do a quick response. But Trump is on top of this, folks. That's why he's put a National Guard out into the sanctuary cities. That's why he's training 500 guard troops in each state for rapid deployment. So yes, it's liable to get dicey, but this is not the Obama administration or the Biden administration. Trump is going to put it down, and he's going to put it down quickly. I believe he knows where most of these cells are. So at any rate, I just want you to know to be prepared that we might have what I call insurrection within the streets of America. That basically they understand that America is too strong to take down from a kinetic attack on the outside. But if they could disable us from the inside, then maybe they might have a chance. So I don't know what they're going to do, but I just want to warn you that that's a possibility. Let's go on down to the next slide, and we're going to get into some encouragement. This is what happens. A global financial collapse is underway. but it's global. So there are people out there saying America is going to fall, and there's a 7-step process that every nation goes through, and America's already on stage 5. So it's fait accompli. No, it's not, because this collapse is not going to follow the pattern of others. We're not looking at one great nation taking over another great nation. We're looking at every great nation in the world having a catastrophic financial collapse all at the same time, causing absolute chaos. The governments of the world are going to fall. Governments, plural, but America is going to rise like the phoenix, and we are going to fulfill our destiny. As Trump said, America will be great. America will be greater than ever. America will be respected. The world doesn't want to live under communism. We are the choice. We are the nation that, given any choice whatsoever, the rest of the citizenry of the world wants to be in alignment with the United States of America, not with Russia, not with China, not with Iran, not with any other superpower. Now, this next slide is going to get a little dicey, but I got to tell you what's coming. Let's go to the next slide. Here's what's happening. We have had stock market collapses before. We've had real estate collapses. We've had bond collapses. We've never had a collapse where all 3 cylinders of the engine of the economy collapsed at the same time. The stock market is poised for a catastrophic collapse. Real estate there's going to be a huge, unbelievable real estate collapse in the commercial industry, because the vacancy rates are so high, it's unbelievable. Because of what? Because people are working out of their homes and they're not going back to the offices. And then the retail real estate market is likewise going to collapse, because the prices are so high that people can't afford them. And they're doing some shenanigans where they're building new homes, but they're building them for rent only, locking people out of the real estate market. That market's going to collapse. And because the dollar is devaluing, that's why prices are going up so much. That's going to affect the bond market. So basically all 3 engines are going to collapse. But it's got to happen to usher in the reset, where we take the financial control away from the global financial elite and we set up a new economic system that basically is going to see America rise to the forefront, lead the rest of the world into an unparalleled period of peace and prosperity. The collapse will be devastating. It'll be deep. It'll be fast, but the rebound will be quick, because we're going to be running the quantum financial system in the background. And basically, there are provisions made to protect your assets. We're running in tandem. However, I have to say, I'm not a financial advisor. I think that the one area, in my opinion, that is at most risk is the stock market. I think what you have in the banks is probably going to be okay. If you have gold and silver in your own possession, that's going to be okay. But I think the stock market is going to take a catastrophic collapse. And here's why. Because we have corporations all over the country, all over the world, that are aligned against us. They are aligned with the global financial elite. So as we bring down the global financial elite, we have to bring down their partners. We have to bring down the banks. We have to bring down the stock market, and we have to expose the election fraud with the government, and we have to purge our drain, as Trump would say, all the politicians, not just in Washington, but at the state level and local level, so we can have a new system, so we can go back and reinstate what America was founded as, a republic. Let's go to the next slide. And I want you to understand, Trump is a master chess player. He's got this figured out. He's going to do everything he can to make this as minimally painful for the people as he can. So here's what he's going to do. He's going to revalue gold. Gold is on the books at $42. He's going to revalue it at $4,000 or above. That's going to bring us in about $1 trillion. And then he's going to sell mineral rights to our federal lands, which he's estimated might bring us in $150 million. Now, there's more to this, but just take those 2 things alone. That's designed to basically pay down or pay off our debt. We're currently paying over $1 trillion a year on interest on our national debt. That's the largest single line item. It's going to go away. It may not go away instantaneously, but he's going to make it go away. At the same time, he's going to build the economy and restore America's GDP and make us once again the economic leader of the world. What's he going to do? He's going to establish the U.S. as a global leader in crypto. That's very, very important. He's going to devalue the dollar to make the U.S. goods more price competitive. That's why he's putting all the pressure on the Fed. I think if the Fed has not actually fallen, and we just haven't been told it's going to fall, but he has to lower the interest rates, probably because we've got a $38 trillion national debt, and a third of that is due for refinancing this year at high rates. So he has to get the interest rates down, and that's something that just absolutely has to happen. And he's staging us to have a very broad-based economy, not based on fiat currency, but it can't singularly be based on gold. So it's a broad-based commodity-backed system: gold, silver, platinum, copper, uranium, wheat, oil. Anything, any commodity in the world can be used to back the new system. And what does that do? And like in a fiat system where we're vulnerable to having it manipulated, each of those commodities have values in and of themselves. So we get a stable economy. And what we're going to have, for those of you who don't know what this is, I invite you to do some research. But we had the Bretton Woods Accords after World War II, which made America the reserve currency of the world. We're not going to come out of this as the sole reserve currency of the world, but we are going to come out of it still as the principal, most important reserve currency of the world. We're still going to have our clout, and this not total clout. And then the transition from the fiat dollar to commodity-backed economy. That's what's going to come. That's going to stabilize us after we have that very harsh and abrupt collapse. So Donald Trump has got it figured out, and here's what he's doing. I'll make a little bit of an additional statement or two before we go on. What he's done is he's made the choice that our currency, our commodity, not commodity, our economy is going to be based on gold and silver and wheat and oil, but we're also going to be the crypto capital of the world. So once we get our currency to where it's stable, people are going to want to do business with the United States of America as opposed to Mexico, as opposed to China, as opposed to Russia. We're going to be the nation they want to be doing business with because of who we are, because of our power. But also, there's another thing he's doing for a myriad of reasons. People want to deal in cryptocurrencies. The third world countries do not have a lot of banks. So he's also designed into it for us to be the crypto capital of the world. And that's going to be very important in making us as strong as we need to be. Let's go down to the next slide. So this is more of what he's doing. Basically, this is probably going to shock a lot of people. A lot of people think America doesn't have much gold. China has more than us. Russia has more than us. No, this is from the IMF. And guess what? America has more gold than any other nation by far. And if you look up at the top right, here's what Trump is orchestrating. This is from Scott Bessent. The BRICS nations are monetizing their supply chain. The U.S. is monetizing its payment chains. Now, what does that mean? They're monetizing their supply chain because we've had most of our manufacturing gutted. So they're the ones who are making the goods that they're shipping around the world. That's why they're monetizing their supply chain. While America is rebuilding its manufacturing, we are monetizing what? We are monetizing our payment chain. And look over to the next side of this, and you'll see what he's doing. Trump is effectively charging import companies, the goods coming in, a toll fee. It's 10% for using our payment system. That is why Trump is setting the U.S. up as the crypto capital of the world. So everything he's been doing with all of these countries and renegotiating trade agreements, basically forcing the tariffs, there's a 10% slush amount in there in order to achieve what you're seeing here. America is going to have a strong revenue stream. And on top of that, then we are going to come back in and rebuild our manufacturing. The future for America looks bright. Let's go to the next slide. And this is what we're going to look like. Freedom, no more fiat dollar, no more currency that's based on nothing. Every dollar printed creates a bond, which creates a gold obligation, a debt obligation. We're going to have a commodity-backed system. America is going to emerge out of this stronger than it's ever been, and it's all going to be run on XRP and XLM as the rails based by commodity-backed systems, and basically with America being the crypto capital of the world, meaning just for nothing more than convenience. If the US dollar is strong, the world will prefer to US dollar. That is going to make what BRICS is doing backfire on them. They don't have the leverage that people think they have. Let's go on down to the next slide. And we've covered this before, but with the fear that I think people are having, I want to basically go over this very quickly. This has been trying to be burst since the assassination of Kennedy. I'm talking about Nasara. And what is it going to give us? It's going to get rid of the Fed. It's going to get rid of the IRS. That means look at all the debt that you don't have to pay. That's 35% of your income that's now in your pocket. And the gold commodity-backed currency, illegal debt will be forgiven. Sales tax, that is what America's entire economy was based on originally. And that's what we're going back to, a simple sales tax on non-essential items only. And then we are going to reinstate our Constitution. Our current Constitution is over 2,700 pages long, and it's full of laws that were written to enslave the American people, not to serve them. And we're going to have increased benefits for our seniors on one of those. And we're going to require a stand down of all military aggression. So in order to have a steady state economy, you have to end wars. And that's why Trump has already put 6 wars to sleep. And if the one in the Middle East holds, that'll be 7. And then he's working on Ukraine and Russia. So basically, he is preparing the groundwork that will allow us to finally, after all these years, to have a new economic system, one that's fair and equitable, and one that allows the people to have a decent standard of living. Let's go on to the next slide, and we're going to see what it looks like once we go into that. The dollar is gone. The dollar always reverts back to its real value as nothing. But when we have a commodity-backed system, not a fiat system, the governments of the world, the puppet masters of the world are no longer able to create inflation, deflation, wage suppression, stock market manipulation, boom bust cycles, national and consumer debt, poverty and division, and global conflicts, period. And the whole system is going to be run on quantum financial systems on the blockchain with privacy and with security. And basically, this is the new system. And it has been coming for a long, long time, but it's going to give the people of the world the ability to have a stable economy. We're not going to have constant devaluation of our currencies. We're going to have a whole lot more money to spend. Let's go on down to the next slide. And this is a quote that I think I'm gonna read it for you. But it basically is saying that we're going to be a whole lot better off than we are. So this is coming from Catherine Austin Fitts, a former U.S. cabinet member to President George H.W. Bush. And here's what she said, and this is based on some pretty good understanding of what's coming. She says, if you look at the total wealth that we can create on planet Earth, if we create a financial system which supports life and is aligned with life, what I will tell you is that our present financial wealth is less than 1% of what is possible. We live in a system where we are inflicted with perpetual hoarding. All the necessities of life are made so expensive that we basically can't control them. So the global financial elite are controlling the money. And by controlling the money, they're controlling our access to housing, to food, to water, to shelter, to healthcare, to all the necessities of life. All of that is going to change. We're not going to have hoarding anymore. Basically, America is going to lead the world technologically along with China. And what's going to happen is we're not going to hoard. We're going to share technology, and all of mankind is going to be uplifted. So let's go on down to the next slide. So here we are, part 2. And all those things are facing us. And I'm doing this series because I want you to understand it's going to be rough, but we're going to get through it. It has to happen. So this is to basically let you know what's coming. And what do they say? The truth will set you free. So if you know we're going to come through this and come out on the other side far better off than we are, hopefully this will help you get through this without getting too stressed out. So let's go down to the details and dig into this and see what it's going to look like. So we're going to be talking, as I said, about climate change and about energy. So basically, here we are. We must have energy independence. And why is that so important? Because energy is probably the biggest single control mechanism that they have. Basically, by driving up prices for energy, we need to understand every item you've ever bought in your life or will buy, the principal cost is energy. Energy is the biggest expense you'll ever have. Most people don't even realize that. And so because of that, we have to change the dynamics of the energy industry and get out from under their control. So let's go to the next slide, and we're going to start to dig down as to how we do this and to what it means when they are able to control. So because they control the energy, and we're going to get into this a little deeper, they're trying to create a global famine. They're poisoning our oceans, which we have the ability to clean up. We can fix that problem. And they're killing the insects, because when it's all said and done, they really want to destroy most of the human beings. They call us just useless eaters. So 80% of the bees have died. And without what does that do? That affects the ability to grow food. So we're facing a clean water crisis that we can fix with free energy. We have the microplastics in the oceans, and that's so important because those are colored little particles, and the fish see that and they think it's food and they eat it, and it's killing us. It's devastating our oceans. And we're poisoning the insects, we're poisoning the air, we're poisoning the land, we're poisoning the people, but we have the ability to clean it all up. But we need free energy in order to be able to do it. Let's go down to the next slide. And this is the overall objective of the global financial elite. The planet is basically on an extermination trajectory if we don't stop. Their stated intention is to exterminate 7 billion of us as useless eaters, because they say we are consuming too many of what they consider to be their natural resources. That's a lie from the pit of hell. The waste that we have is because they insist on making products that are designed to basically self-destruct in a matter of months or a year or two, when we have the ability to make products that can last for a lifetime. And if they break, that can be repaired. So we need to have a new, completely different economic model, one that's not based on waste. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll break this down a little bit further. This slide is very important. This shows you what I mean when I say that we can't stabilize this economy. We can't save this planet unless we have free energy. So look at the top row there. Without free energy, we can't have clean water. We can't have clean land. We can't have sustainable cities. We can't have good health, because you can't have good health, go to the next two, if you have poverty and if you have hunger. And all of those things all require that we have access to energy at an affordable price, so that people all around the world can have food and they're not hungry, and they have cities that have good grids where they can have basically electricity 24/7, 365. So that's what we're facing. We're facing the lie from the global financial elite to claim to be able to do all of those things. And in reality, they don't want to do any of them. What they want to do is to create a global financial famine, and basically through war, if they need to, through another pandemic, to basically reduce the population to 1 billion people or less. We need to understand that as we go through this presentation. Let's go to the next slide. And we need to understand that the UN's Green New Deal is a farce. It is basically a weapon that's been turned against us. We have the technology to save the planet. Basically, we can clean the air, the water, the land, and we can restore Earth and its ecosystems if we'll all work together. But no one nation can fix it unless every nation in the world cooperates to do the things that are necessary it's useless. So basically, what we're coming into is a period in time where humanity is going to have to stop the wars, stop fighting, and stand united, not one nation under God, but the world united under God. And when we do, we will be able to do unbelievable things, things that seem miraculous, but they're all within our power if we stand united. And God's always known that. Now, I'm going to give you some proof as to what I've been saying in the last couple of minutes is going on. If we go to the next slide, we're going to go back in time. We're going to go to College Magazine, and we're going to find out that that thing that they call HARP, that they deny is causing the weather phenomena that we see, that's causing the hurricanes and the tornadoes and the typhoons and the earthquakes and everything. This is called Operation Popeye, and we employed it in the Vietnam War to create perpetual typhoons so that we could just drench the supply chain trails in Vietnam. And basically that was a weapon that we used in the war. And so we've had it all the way back to the 60s, and we've used it as a weapon. And it is that you see when you see all these hurricanes and these tornadoes and all these weather disruptions. It's all man-made, all caused by a weapon of war called HARP, which is used to control our weather as a weapon. And also, as we'll get into what we're going to do next week, it's also used to help brainwash us, but we'll save that for a later time. So Operation Popeye was used in Vietnam as a weather manipulation weapon. Let's go to the next slide and we'll give some more credibility to that. So here's two of my, I wouldn't say favorite presidents, I might say the exact opposite, but basically we've got Lyndon Baines Johnson. And remember now, these two men were in power when we were in Vietnam. And Johnson says, who controls the weather will control the world. That's what they're doing to us. They're controlling the weather so that they can utterly control the world. And then Kissinger, the Secretary of State, says, who controls the food supply controls the people. Who controls the energy can control the whole country. Who controls the money can control the world. There you have it, folks. There's the game plan on one slide. And it all relates to energy. It all relates to money. We've got to have a financial reset, and we've got to get this weapon, this HARP, basically neutered. And we can use it if we get control to basically stabilize our weather instead of causing the extremes that we have right now. But these men are actually confessing to what they've been doing. Let's go to the next slide, and we're going to break down HARP a little bit more and let you know. So those chemtrails you see in the sky, that's basically them poisoning us, that's seeding the clouds, etc. And those antennas, there are 800 of them up in Alaska, plus they have mobile units. They are what is causing all these weather disruptions. If you go to that picture over to the far right, that is God's hydrologic system, and it's beautiful. It simply says that 70% or more of the earth is water. As the sun heats it up, it evaporates. It causes a river of water in the ocean in the form of the clouds, and they have tapped into that and used it as a weapon. But if we have free energy and if we control HARP, then we can turn that weapon into something that can absolutely make the earth blossom. Our lakes and rivers and aquifers are intentionally being dried up. But with free energy, we can basically pull water right from the atmosphere, and we can have clean, fresh, drinkable water, irrigatable water anywhere in the world. Now, that alone is not the total solution, but it is a monumental solution. You're going to see other things that we're going to need to do as we go through the next slides, but this has to be given to humanity. We are wasting. We're basically, look at that picture up to the left. We are irrigating through the most inefficient system possible. When you irrigate like that, basically most of the water evaporates. It's wasteful. But other nations of the world have drip irrigation, etc. So we're gonna go through in a minute some of the emergency things we need to do to prevent this famine that I'm talking about, and then HARP. And one other thing I'm going to show you is the long-term solution that will regreen the entire earth. So let's go to this next slide, and we're going to get into the emergency steps steps that we need to take. What you see right there is very simple. Now, there's 5 or 6 other ways they regreen deserts. But this one here, what they're doing is they're making areas that are catches that will catch water so that we can grow vegetation. And what you see is year 1, year 2, and then I took a separate picture to show you a little bit more. That desert in the is basically regreening. The whole thing is going from a barren desert and it's changing. It's just like we're coming in and taking a paintbrush and painting it green and bringing it back to life. But here's the things we need to do on an emergency basis. Access to water from our Cascade Mountains. So the people who control us, who want to see the aquifer in California dry, and want to see the Great Plain aquifers dry, want to see Lake Mead dry up, want to see us have a famine in the world, because the U.S. feeds 100 nations. If our aquifer in California dries, that basically most of our vegetables. If the aquifer in the Great Plains dries, that's most of our wheat. And also, if you go down into Mexico, the northern part of Mexico is where we get our winter vegetables. So we have the Cascade Mountains, and all that snow melt that comes is flushed out into the ocean. It could be redirected into California to grow our vegetables instead of taking thousands of acres out of production because we don't have any water. And then we could do what Israel and other nations do. We could go away from the wasteful form of irrigation that we have with the sprinklers. We could go to drip irrigation, and basically that would make the water that we do have go so much further, it's not even funny. And then there are nations in the Middle East that don't have a single river, that are able to grow enough food to be self-sufficient, and some of them even export. What they do is they take every little catch, every little drainage ditch, and they put a dam across it, and they collect water. They're not damming up major rivers because they have none. They're just trying to catch all the water, because when you have a desert environment, the soil is dry and all you have is flash floods. So they're basically intersecting those areas where those floods occur, putting a dam across, and instead of allowing that water to be wasted, it's used. It's basically used to benefit and to provide them with the water that they need to grow their food. And then we got to go back to HARP. HARP is used for humanitarian purposes instead of a weather weapon. That's something we have to do immediately. And if we do that and all these things, then all of a sudden we're on the way to regreening those deserts. And now to fill our aquifers, it's going to take a little more. But the biggest thing on that list for America is to basically stop the bull that's happening in California, where they say this little minnow, because of him, we have to flush all that water out into the ocean, and we have to basically cut production of thousands, maybe millions of acres of arable farmland in California. It's just a ruse to basically bring in what they want to bring in, which is the largest famine the world has ever seen. Let's go to the next slide and we'll break this down a little deeper. This is the system that God made. This is the system that keeps the world in balance, unless, of course, we come in with our technology and disrupt it. So basically the water evaporates from the ocean and clouds, and they follow a predictable pattern using the jet stream. But what we now know that is happening around the world is, if we have free energy, it's costly to do this, we can it's so simple. We just have devices that create a temperature that causes condensation, and we pull the water right out of the air, and it's clean, it's evaporated from the oceans, and every degree that the planet's temperature rises makes 7% more water evaporate from the ocean. So this is a 100% sustainable technology that we can use to basically regreen the deserts of the world. Add HARP and on top of that, and basically we're getting to where we need to go. But there's one more thing we need to do. Let's go to the next slide. Now, I want to stop here before I talk about this slide, and I want to tell you what China is doing. 5 of the 17 dynasties of China fell because of water issues. You cannot be a superpower nation if you can't feed your people. You can't feed your people if you don't have water. So China has a problem. They have too much water in the south and not enough water in the north. And so they're building one of the biggest projects that's ever been built. They're basically building a huge canal. Part of it's above ground, part of it's below ground, and they're moving massive amounts of water from the south of the nation to the north. Now, let's go to this slide and break this down. This is a project that was proposed back in the 60s. They looked into it. They said it is entirely feasible, but then they didn't do it. So here's what we need to do. This is the last thing we need to do to assure the long-term survival of America, to assure that we don't have a global famine. Because if America and the northern part of Mexico don't have any water, we feed 100 nations of the world. We're one of the biggest bread baskets in the world. So what is happening here with these lines that you see is up in Alaska, there's a river, the Yukon, the Leonard and the Peace Rivers. Two of them are in Canada, one is in Alaska, and they, like the Cascade, dump out into the Pacific Ocean. And we can capture that water. Instead of letting it dump out into the Pacific Ocean, we can channel it, and we can channel it down through the breadbasket of Canada, benefiting Canada, come down into the United States, essentially into the western portion of the United States where we grow most of our vegetables, and then down into the northern part of Mexico where we get our winter vegetables. And we can use that technology and other technologies, and we can refill our aquifers, and we can have a long-term solution that says we're not going to have that famine. We're not going to be able to be put into a situation where we can't feed ourselves, much less feed the other people of the world. This is critical. It's going to cost $1 trillion. And it's going to take decades. So we need to go back and think about those short-term emergency solutions that I provided. They need to be implemented immediately. And we need to get together with Canada and with our leaders in Washington and with Mexico, and jointly, we need to fund this project. It is going to be the lifeblood of the future for all three nations. Every nation in the world is vulnerable to the shortages of water, and we are more blessed than other nations. But if you look at the Middle East and you look at North Africa, they have absolutely critical shortages of water. Their aquifers are already drying or dry. And what happens when you get that situation? You have water wars and you have famine. And if America goes in that same direction, the world is truly, truly in trouble. And by the way, don't forget to subscribe. We're talking about some very, very important stuff that's coming down at a very, very important time in history, and we need to have people understand what's going on. So part 3, we're going to shift gears. We're moving away from climate and ecological issues. We're moving away from the fear and the threat of a catastrophic worldwide famine, and we're going back to economics. We're going back to what Trump is doing to see to it that he can keep his promise to the American people on making America great again, making America greater than ever, making America prosper and respected, and making America retain its position of leadership, but on a much more stable basis than it has been on before. So basically, I just want to encourage you, don't be afraid. There's a lot of things happening, but Trump's got it queued up and ready as any human being can. And what he misses, God's got covered. So we're going to come out of this happy, because we're going to be out from under the slavery system that we've been under, and we're going to have a peace and a serenity that we've just never imagined was possible. So let's break it down and let's get into why we must have manufacturing prowess. And that's Trump's all make America great again strategy. What he's basically doing is he's saying we're going to bring manufacturing back to the United States. And to do that, what he had to do is acknowledge that the people in Washington, ever since Carter, have basically ceded our manufacturing to China. And now we have to bring it back. And how he's doing that is with renegotiating trade agreements and with inflicting tariffs on people, so that basically it's now incumbent upon them to say, We don't want to send our money to China to build more factories because China is being gutted. The factories are leaving. So where do they go? They go to the United States of America. He's brought in approximately $17 trillion in commitments to build new factories. Now here, I want to stop when I want to make a comment. I just get so frustrated with these people. The newscasters are out there saying, he promised he was going to build factories. He promised he was going to revitalize the manufacturing and get rid of the Rust Belt. And what's he done? Folks, it's just been a few months. So what we have to realize is there are obstacles out there that keep him from being able to get these projects started quickly. He's changing those regulations, and he's saying to people, if you bring in $1 billion, we'll clear the cobwebs away and we'll get you started on your project within 90 days. So it takes you, depending on the size of the factory, it can take a year, 2 years, 3 years to build it. So yes, this is the future. The future is a new American financial base based on getting back our manufacturing prowess, based on moving from the number 2 position back to a rightful number 1 position. And basically what Trump is doing, as we went in one of the earlier segments, he's getting us out from under the debt, and then he's going to reestablish our vibrant GDP based on manufacturing, and that's going to be the long-term lifeblood that's going to make America the leader economically of the world for hopefully generations to come. So basically, he is doing everything he can to restore our manufacturing base, but we need to give the man a little bit of time. So basically, what's he saying to these people? I'm not extorting you. He's saying make your products outside of the U.S. and you'll pay tariffs. But if you don't want to pay tariffs, basically build them in the United States, and you'll get some of the lowest taxes in the world and no tariffs. What he's doing is going back to things that are absolutely proven. He's going back to something that most Americans don't even understand, the American economic system. That is what made America great in the first place, when we put what? Tariffs on England, forcing products to be too expensive for the American people to buy from England, forcing us to innovate the Industrial Revolution. We're doing it again. But what did that strategy accomplish in the first place? We became the only system ever devised, the tendency of which was to do what? To elevate while equalizing the condition of man throughout the world. If you look at what England and all the European nations have done, the first world nations, during our entire lifetime, they have committed Western hegemony against the world. And what does that mean? That means that they had the money, and he who controls money controls the world. And they saw to it that the resource-rich nations of the Southern Hemisphere were not given the infrastructure they needed in order to capitalize on their vast resources. And so they kept them in poverty. That's going to end. The American system is going to be reestablished, and we're going to basically share technology with the world, just like we did when we became the innovators of the Industrial Revolution and shared the railroad, shared the automobile, shared the assembly line. We're going to do it again. And that's why Trump, in his first term, basically got the Supreme Court to hear the Chevron decision. And for those of you who don't know, basically that freed up 5,000, I think it's 915 shelved patents that were shelved because they declared them to be a national security risk. No, that's not what it was. They were shelved because they threatened the $7 trillion energy industry in the United States of America. That door has been opened, and that also is going to take some time. We're going to have to continue to basically be dependent on fossil fuels, not inefficient wind power or solar, but on fossil fuels for the next few years while we gear up and get those factories going, get that new technology out, and we move into basically energy that is virtually free, that is absolutely clean, that is going to reduce the price of every item you will buy in the future by as much as 50, 60, or 70%, depending on the complexity of the logistics change. And I'm going to give you probably the most important analysis I can in terms of what a logistics chain looks like. And so I'll pick one that's complicated. and that's the making of an automobile. And that automobile has this genesis in a strip mine where a great big crane picks up 10 tons of coal using diesel, drops it into a huge truck and drives it away using diesel, takes it to a smelt and refines it using coal, and then ships that steel out all around the world on ships using diesel. And then they're assembled in those factories running off electricity from the grid. And then they're put in ships or in trucks and shipped around the world, again, using diesel. And then we, the consumer, millions of us, billion of us, drive and buy those. And what you're seeing is every single step of the way, the largest component of the cost of that automobile and everything you'll ever buy is energy. So if we get out from under the situation where currently energy prices are controlled artificially and we get free, clean energy, the cost of everything is going to go away. And now let's look at what we talked about in an earlier segment. If Trump gets us out from under the Fed, if Trump gets us out from under the tax burden that we have and gets us on a simple flat tax, and then all the cost of everything that we buy goes down, and then also on top of that, let's look at the housing industry to give you another pertinent example. In 2019, when they really started to financially collapse the world intentionally, the average cost of a house was $200,000 and the interest rate was 3%. Well, now because of the declining value of the dollar, that same house is $420,000 and the interest rate is 7%. That's beginning to go down, but basically that's all because the dollar was dying. Now, once we go back to the new economic system that's based on commodities and the dollar is worth $1, you're going to be able to go back and look at history and look at the 1950s up to the period of 1971 when the dollar was worth $1. And it's going to be very obvious to you that that $420,000 house is going to cost somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000. You put all that together, folks, and you're going to have such financial blessings that you cannot even imagine. And then on top of that, go back and look at the earlier segment we did and look at the blessings that are going to come to you through Nasara. And what you're going to see is that quote that I said that said that basically our current economic standard of living is 1% of what is potential. We are going to see God's blessings pour out on us to a degree and in ways and manners that we cannot even imagine. So let's get back to what Trump is doing, back to the tariffs. And basically, we are basically going to implement the very thing that made us the richest nation in the world. Look over to the left-hand side. In 1876, the fledgling United States of America, the youngest nation in the world, declared at a world fair that had some 10 million people come from all around the world to see the amazing technologies of the United States. 34 years earlier, we were in bankruptcy. Now in 1876, we declared America, the youngest nation in the world, is now the wealthiest nation in the world based on exactly the strategies that Trump is implementing right now today. So all those people who say poo-poo to tariffs, go back and open up history book and find out what the real truth is. Let's go on down, and I'm going to do a summary here that's going to kind of, refocus things for you. This is what Trump is doing with his Make America Great plan. Basically, he's creating the foundation that's going to take America into the next 100 years. And here's what he's doing. What he's doing is cause the U.S. debt crisis to, I'm going to go back. You're going to have to edit this, Curtis. Basically, what's happening is now we're having, oh, God. Okay. I'm going to start over on this part. You're going to have to edit this out. So what Trump's policies are doing is creating financial stability for the United States. He's basically creating a situation where the cause of the U.S. debt crisis is intentionally losing trade, and he's changing that. We're going to have trade that's going to be positive. We're going to have money coming in from our trade agreements. And he's going to end critical shortages of all natural resources. We're going to have access to all the resources we want. They're not going to be able to control them and then manipulate them again. Dependency on foreign-made goods is going to go away. What's he doing? He's saying we're going out, for example, if you look at the news for the last few weeks, he's negotiating rare earth deals all around the world. And if you you look at the things that are made in China that can control us, they control our steel. They control a lot of industries. They control most of the solar panels, but most importantly, they control most of the ingredients for all our pharmaceuticals. Trump is getting back control of all of those supply lines so that we can't be held hostage from any vantage point. And basically, potential blockages of trade. I'm going to start this slide over. So what's Trump's Buy America agenda entails is the following. Causes of the U.S. debt crisis, intensely losing trade. He's wiping that out. Critical shortages of natural resources. He's wiping that out. Dependency on foreign-made goods. No longer going to allow that to happen. We're not going to be dependent on rare earth. We're not going to be dependent on China for steel. We're not going to be dependent on China for pharmaceuticals, unfair trade practices. We're wiping it out. We're going to make money on our trade deals. We're not going to lose money. Potential blockage of trade routes. That's why he is so interested in what happens in the Panama Canal and what happens in Greenland. We have to have viable trade routes to the east, or America is in trouble. So he's protecting those routes. Potential baggage of trade routes is something that is crucial to our national security. We really need to understand that. Invasion of illegal immigrants. Look at what he's doing. He's closed that border. He's taken away all the things that are being used against us as weapon, and judicial overreach. He just got the Supreme Court to hear a case that says, you know what? We have three branches of government, and the judicial does not have the right to say to the executive that you cannot do this or that. So the executive had been exerting their power. They do not have the power now, according to the Supreme Court, to make decisions that infect the entire country. That is the purview of the executive branch. And so now all of a sudden, Trump can fire people, Trump can deport people, and the judges are not empowered to stop him. And technology race with China, we're going to come out of this looking very, very good. China had a 100-year strategy, but what Trump did has caused a major problem for them. Their goal was to be the manufacturing superpower of the world, manufacturing initially low-tech items and mid-tech items, and then shifting toward high-tech, which is where they hoped to surpass the United States. But what Trump has done is initiating a global reset where basically the supply chain is being ripped away from China, and the world is not going to see the ability to have China control the world by trade or the United States control the world through its currency. And what that is doing is it's stripping away the ability of China to basically make that transition to being the leader as the technical superpower of the world. Right? It's going to remain with America for some time to come. Now, the final analysis as to who wins that final war is going to determine who is in the head at the end of this game in AI. Right now, America still has a fairly substantial lead. So the future for America looks very, very bright. I believe and I predict that China is going to have a catastrophic financial collapse because it's not going to be able to make that transition, because the real estate market is collapsing. Their trade is being pulled away from them. There's massive unemployment. The people have lost their life savings, and the whole nation is on the brink of uprising. So I believe that China is going to have a catastrophic collapse, be relegated to be a regional power, and it's going to take decades for it to come back, if it ever does. And I don't believe it will. I believe America is ordained by God to basically be the nation that leads the world through this chaos back to the other side, and America will be the phoenix. Once we get our finances under control, we will be able to come in and we will be able to do just like what we did in the Industrial Revolution. We will be able to help every nation to have financial sovereignty, every nation to have access to technology, every nation to be able to feed its people, and the world will have peace and prosperity, the likes of which we haven't seen. So let's go on to the next slide, and we're going to just remind you of what that American system is all about. That's what we're talking about, re-implementing it. And this was a quote from way, way, way back. Two systems are for the world. One is the English system. Now you can insert today in today's economy. it just changed the word English to the Chinese free trade system. The other one we'd be proud to call the American economic system, the only one ever devised, the tendency of which was that of elevating while equalizing the condition of all man throughout the world. And then I've got a second quote that I want to read you. In the words of Henry C. Kissinger, economic advisor to Abraham Lincoln, the British system, and insert Chinese system, is the most gigantic system of slavery the world has ever seen. And therefore it is that freedom gradually disappears from every country over which England or China is enabled to obtain control. So basically they gut the manufacturing, they make it so that they sell you cheap goods, but in the process they hollow out your manufacturing, hollow out your economic base, and basically drive you into financial ruin. And that's what's not going to happen. We're going to turn that around. And if you want some tangible understanding of what I'm talking about, we'll go to the next slide and I'll break it down for you. So the goal of the global financial elite, they were puppeting Carter as they have puppeted virtually every president since McKinley, with the exception of Eisenhower, the exception of Reagan, and the exception of Trump. So what we had was a 200-year history of America where we only amassed a $660 billion national debt. And then here's what the global financial elite did. They had chosen America to allow us to become the superpower so we could use our Navy to police the oceans, so that we could keep the seaports open for Britain and for the European nations. But then they said, America's getting too powerful. We need to shift power to China. And here's what they basically said. They said that they wanted to create a completely new economic system. And what was that economic system? They wanted to create a super hybrid capitalist communist economy. Why? Because that economy would have the innovation of American capitalism with the control of communism. And that's what they started to create with Carter, where they ceded our manufacturing to China, and all the investments went to China. That's 100% turning around right now. So if you doubt what I'm saying, just look at that graph down below. 200-year-old America with a $660 billion net. And then it goes under Reagan to over $1 trillion. And then it goes to Bush to almost $3 trillion. And then to Clinton, $4.5 trillion. And then to Bush 2, 5.9. And then we get to Obama, 12.3. And now it's at $38 trillion. And it was based on intentionally losing war entitlements and losing trade agreements. It was all done on purpose. Trump is getting back control of all of the things that caused America to have such a devastating financial collapse. Our future looks bright beyond your ability to even imagine it. We've never seen anything like the blessings that are going to come on this planet, and particularly on the United States of America. And let's go on down, and we're going to see what has to happen to bring that to peace. Donald Trump has been saying this from the podium since he got elected the first time. And now I'm thinking of Iraq with the dinar, and I'm thinking of Vietnam, and I'm thinking of all those other currencies around the world where we went in and bombed the heck out of them when their currencies collapsed. If we are going to have peace on this planet, every nation has to have economic parity. It was Eisenhower who said, is there any man, is there any woman, is there any child that doesn't understand the principal cost of war on this planet is economic inequality between nations? And so Trump is saying all those currencies have to be reset. And we're very close to the dinar being reset and the dong being reset. And we got to get Venezuela under control to where they have a stable economy. And then that nation's currency will be revalued, and then the others will follow along. And so we're going to soon enter into a situation where every nation in the world can feed itself. Every nation in the world has a decent standard of living, and the principal cause of war is going to go away. And Trump is going into all these nations where we've had wars that have been going on for decades and bringing peace. And he's doing it by leveraging the promise that if they cooperate, they will be able to live and have prosperity within their nations. All nations of the world are going to have to be brought to a situation where we have peace and prosperity. And that means that Western hegemony is dead. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll break that down, and we'll see what that looks like. Basically, if you haven't read it, I really, really recommend the book, The Economic Hitman. And basically what he's basically telling, I'm not going to read that whole quote, quote, is that powerful entities around the world, U.S. aid, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, NGOs, they basically, what they do is they control the third world countries of the world. They go in and they loan the money to develop the infrastructure, and then they make sure that those projects default. Think about the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, and then they take over those assets and they take those nations' valuable natural resources that can make them wealthy, that can give stability to their nations, and they keep them in abject poverty because they force them to ship their goods out as raw materials instead of refining them and sending them out as finished products. So we're in a movement where hegemony is going to have to stop. We're going to have deglobalization and de-dollarization, and that's going to lead to economic purity for virtually every single solitary country on the planet, and that's going to lead to peace and prosperity. Let's go down to the next slide, and we're going to look at basically what has to happen to make that happen. It's kind of moving towards the end of the journey, and it's right out of the Bible. A nation divided cannot stand. And so what they have done is everything they can do to divide us. They have used every means possible. They've used money. They've used war. They've used sexual orientation. They've used religion. They've used race. They've used everything they can. What we have to come to the understanding of is that peace and prosperity are only possible if all the nations of the world stand united and cooperate and address the crises that face this planet. And one of the biggest ones is getting water, so where we don't have a worldwide global financial collapse, and where we don't have billions of people starve to death because of famine and pestilence that follows. This is crucial. We need to learn to understand that we have to stand together. And where did all this brainwashing start that they have inflicted upon us? Let's go to the next slide, and we're going to see that they have some essential core understandings. Joseph Stalin said that America is like a healthy body, and its resistance is its patriotism, its morality, and its spirituality. If we can undermine these three areas, America will collapse from within. So, man, have they attacked the family? Have they attacked our ability to go into our schools and pledge allegiance to the flag, to pray in the schools? Have they attacked the family with their same-sex marriage policies? Have they attacked religion? Absolutely, because the whole idea was to weaken America from within, and then you layer on top of that the incursion of some 20 million illegal immigrants that are designed to economically collapse us with all the entitlements that they get, and then to also work as an army of surgeons to basically be a Trojan horse to, at some point in time, bring terrorist attacks against America from within our own borders. So let's go down to the next slide, and we'll see the basis of what's necessary if we're going to transition into this new economy of peace and prosperity. We're going to have unity. We're going to have patriotism. We're going to have to have faith back. We're going to have communities again. What they've been doing in the real estate market is making it so that it's almost impossible for younger people to buy a home. All the homes, if they can afford them, are for rent, and that destroys the sense of community. We're going to have to go to the Bible and understand that the most important thing in the world was basically answered by Christ when he was asked, Master, what is the most important scripture in the Bible? To love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul. And the second is unto it to love thy brother. That means we got to love our humanity, and we've got to treat people fair. And the core of how we do that is right in the center. We have to have election integrity. We have to have secure borders, and we have to have sovereign currencies, because whoever controls those controls all the spheres of influence, and it can either be used for good or it can be used for evil. Right now, it's been used to enslave us and to control all the necessities of life. But in the new economic system that's coming, it's going to be used to free us. We're going to have freedom, the likes of which we cannot even begin to imagine. Let's go down to the next slide. And this is what the world is going to look like. This is where we start to cooperate. We start to put solutions into place, and we start to see the future that God wants us to have. Regionalization and decentralization. So basically what happens is now we got the manufacturing power of China, and we share it with nations all around the world. And trade decentralization occurs. So they don't have the ability to basically intersect the logistics chains and make it so you can't get an iPhone for a year or a car for a year. Monetary decentralization. There's going to be several currencies that will be considered reserve currencies, but the United States will be the dominant one because of the things that I outlined in a previous section here. And wellness will be, we're going to get back our health. They have poisoned us through the air, through the water, through our medicines, and that is now going to change. And we're going to get back our spirituality, our morality, and we're going to have a nation that stands together. Look at what they've done to us. Look at the DEI movement, where they basically say, we control the money, and if you don't support our LGBT movement, if you don't support our DEI movement, no loans, meaning they'll shut those corporations down. So here's an example from the last couple of months. Look what happened to Anheuser-Busch. In order to maintain their access to credit, they were forced to put a transvestite's picture on their beer can, and bam, they lost $27 billion. And look to Target. They were forced to basically have their rainbow line of clothing, and they lost $7 billion. That's all changing. It's changing, it's changing, it's changing. And let's bring that slide back up to full so I can see the rest of it. Okay, no polluting, free energy. Look at what that's going to do. I mean, that's going to make us healthier, and it's going to make us have all the food we need, and food and water. Basically, once we get control of food and water and energy, the whole world has the opportunity to have peace and prosperity. And then shared research and development. We have some huge issues, like the moving of water to where it needs to be, like the cleaning of our oceans, the restocking of our oceans that are basically being depleted. None of those projects are going to happen by a single nation. It's going to require a whole one world approach where every nation in the world has to cooperate to solve those what seem to be overwhelming problems, but with cooperation, with standing in unity, with the technologies that are going to be released, the almost 6,000 patents that are going to give us free technology and unbelievable capabilities that we can't even imagine. Nothing is going to be impossible. Shared R&D and natural resources will make the world blossom like you can't believe, and global parity will create that equality that brings peace to the world. And having a global military non-aggression agreement, which is why Trump is going around the world creating all these peace agreements, will usher in an unparalleled period of peace and prosperity in the world. Let's go on down, and we're just about done, folks. So here we are. This is what God ordained. This is what Trump is orchestrating. This is what I believe the nations of the world want. Don't think about it in terms of what the global financial elite want. They're going to be basically stripped of their power. And what we're going to get is we're going to get what you see here. The world, the people of the world don't trust communist regimes. They know that America's done some bad things, but they also know we've been puppeted by the global financial elite. Once we get out from under them, there's no nation in the world they would rather have lead the future than America. We are the only really, truly free superpower in the world. And that's just why the world wants to see America be victorious. And basically, America is going to bring to the table a diverse and abundant natural resources that will be able to see us lead the world into a future of technological advancements, the likes of which you can't even imagine. And a diverse and innovative technology industry. Basically, America innovated what? The Industrial Revolution, the .com, the internet, the computer. And America has some 6,000 patents stored up where we are going to innovate our way out of chaos into a future that's so amazing that we can't even imagine. And leadership in manufacturing, America, and within the next 2 or 3 years, is going to regain its position as the #1 manufacturing country in the world. and energy and food dependency. We are not going to be dependent. We are going to execute the short-term emergency strategies that I mentioned, and I believe we're going to get back control of HARP, and we're going to be able to basically cooperate and do all the things we need to do to avoid that famine. But that is the number one thing that people need to understand. The Green New Deal is a diversion. It's to say, look over here at these technologies that we tell you are going to solve the problems. The problem is not carbon in the atmosphere. The problem is that life cannot exist without water. And then the demographics as they relate to GDP, what does that mean? It means that we have some of the youngest people in the world, where China, for example, has one of the greatest aging populations in the world. Add that to the re-innovating of the American manufacturing sector, and America becomes, again, the leader in a global language. There's been no nation in the world that was the global leader unless they were the global language. And the UN has declared that the global language of the world is English. And you have to have a strong military to keep the trade routes open and to create stability throughout the world. There's only one nation in the world that can check every one of those boxes, and that is the United States of America. So the future for America looks a little scary short term, but we have to go through what has to happen to take the money away from the global financial elite and to usher in a new economic system based on commodities, a system that cannot be controlled, a system that cannot be manipulated, a system that brings peace and prosperity to the world. So let's go to the next slide, and we're almost done. Here's what we need to understand. This is what Trump has been saying since he came back. We have no nation in the world currently that is truly independent. They don't have sovereignty. If your economic system has been taken over by the central banking system, I think it was either Stalin or Lenin who said that imposing a central bank on the nation is 90% of communizing that nation. And if we go back and look at the history that I've shown you before, we understand that we haven't had a truly honest election since McKinley. And so what's happening right now is we're having a deluge of whistleblowers come out to expose the swamp, to show us that nations around the world, not just America, but 72 nations around the world have governments in place that were not elected by the people, but that are there to represent the very puppet masters who were controlling us. So what this slide is telling you is Donald Trump's whole game from the beginning was to expose the global financial system, to expose the swamp that exists not only in Washington, but in governments around the world. We have to see to it that they collapse. And for that to happen, we have to have this financial reset. So don't be fearful of it. Understand that we're going to have the banking system running in tandem when this comes down, and there will be people who will lose some money, but it's not going to be as devastating as you think. But we will have a very quick rebound on the other side. So we need to basically do a stand down. And here we're going to summarize. This is what Trump is orchestrating: sovereign currency, sovereign borders, honest elections, resource independence, energy independence, manufacturing prowess, equitable trade agreements, global financial parity, shared values and goals. And what does that lead to? That leads to a policy where Trump keeps his promise of making America great, making America greater than it's ever been, making America respected, and helping America restore its financial basis so we can help the rest of the world basically have a situation where the whole world can live in peace, because every nation in the world has economic stability and all nations of the world are at relative parity. That's what God wants. That's what God is orchestrating. God is taking away the money from the financial elite. He's giving it to his children. We're in the book of Exodus. We're basically going to have the transfer of wealth from the wicked to the righteous. So that ends this 3-part series. I encourage you to buy this book, because truly knowledge is power. When God told me when I had my near-death experience in 68, is what's going to happen for you, Larry, is I'm going to hold you in the cleft of the rock until the end, and then I'm going to bring you out to speak the powerful truth that I want you to speak. That's going to open people's eyes, and the truth is going to set them free. We are about to see billions of people around the world understand that their governments are not really truly elected, and we're going to see banks close, we're going to see corporations fall, we're going to see governments be gutted, and we're going to see a completely new economic system, a completely new political system, and we're going to see peace and prosperity, the likes of which we have never seen in our lifetimes. The best is yet to come. So thank you for joining. Please, if you have not subscribed, subscribe, and I hope you understand that this is really, really important. We're coming to a head. I believe by the end of this year, we're probably going to have gone through everything that you see there, and we'll be in the midst of the reset. We'll probably have gone through the financial collapse, and we'll be restoring everything, but it's going to be bumpy and it's going to be scary. Share this with everybody you know so that they can know what's coming, and knowledge is power. And with that knowledge, you can sit back and understand that we won before we ever started this battle. It's all been orchestrated for a long time. God is always on our side, and we've been basically orchestrating this since at least the assassination of Kennedy. We are winning right now, and it's just a matter of fighting that final battle. And when we do, we're going to see unparalleled peace and prosperity. Be blessed. God bless you. We'll see you next time.